The sound of a 90-pound Cane Corso knocking a toddler to the floor is unmistakable. Sarah heard it from the kitchen, that heavy, dull thud that makes every parent's blood stop. She dropped the dish towel and ran. Atlas had Sophie pinned. The toddler was flat on the carpet, face up, the dog's massive head lowered directly over the child's face. Sophie was crying, not screaming, just a confused, frightened cry that meant something hurt, but nothing was broken yet. Atlas. No. Sarah grabbed the dog's collar and pulled hard. Atlas resisted. For the first time since they brought him home 3 years ago, he didn't obey immediately. His body was rigid. His eyes stayed locked on Sophie. She pulled harder. The dog finally stepped back, but slowly, reluctantly. Sophie sat up, tears streaming, reaching for Sarah. No visible injuries, no blood, just scared. But that sound, that thud, that had been real. She scooped Sophie up and carried the toddler to the couch, heart still racing. Atlas stood exactly where she'd pulled him, staring at them both. His tail wasn't wagging. His ears were forward, alert, not guilty, not ashamed, just watching. When Chris got home that evening, Sarah was still shaken. She explained what happened. The sound, the way Atlas had Sophie on the floor, the way he wouldn't move when she called him. Chris knelt down and checked Sophie carefully. No bruises, no bumps. The toddler was already playing again, completely fine. But Sarah wasn't fine. He's never done anything like that, Chris said. I know, that's what scares me. Chris looked at Atlas. The dog sat in the corner of the living room, eyes moving between Chris and Sophie. Calm, steady. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe Sophie startled him. It didn't feel like an accident. It felt deliberate. That night, they kept Atlas in the laundry room while Sophie slept. It felt wrong. He'd never been locked away before. But Sarah couldn't shake the image of that moment, the weight of the dog on top of their child. The next morning, it happened again. Sarah was changing Sophie's diaper when Atlas came into the nursery. He walked directly to the changing table and pressed his nose against Sophie's face. Not sniffing, pressing. Atlas, back. He didn't move. She said it louder. Atlas, back. Now. Still nothing. She physically pushed him away. He took 2 steps back, then immediately moved forward again, nose going straight to Sophie's mouth. Sarah's patience snapped. Out! Now. That afternoon, Sarah called the vet. The vet listened carefully, asked questions. How old was Atlas? Had there been any other behavior changes? Any aggression toward other people? No, just Sophie. The vet was quiet for a moment, then said, "It might be stress. Sometimes dogs react unpredictably when there's a baby in the house, especially if they were used to being the center of attention." Sarah thanked her and hung up. By that evening, she'd made the decision. Atlas couldn't stay. Chris didn't want to believe it. He'd raised Atlas from a puppy, trained him, trusted him. But he'd also seen the fear in Sarah's face. He'd heard the description of that moment, the dog on top of their child, refusing to move. They agreed to call a rescue organization in the morning. That night, Atlas slept in the garage. Sarah lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She felt guilty. She felt scared. She felt like she was betraying a family member, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw Atlas's head hovering over Sophie's face, and her chest tightened. At 2:47 a.m., the baby monitor lit up. Sophie was crying. Not the usual fussy cry, something else. A strange, weak sound. Sarah sat up immediately and grabbed her phone. The video feed showed Sophie in the crib, barely moving. She ran. Chris was right behind her. When they opened the nursery door, Atlas was already inside. He'd somehow gotten out of the garage, somehow made it through the house, somehow opened the nursery door, or it hadn't latched. He was standing on his back legs, front paws on the crib rail, nose pressed against Sophie's face. Atlas, get back. Chris grabbed the dog and pulled him away. Sarah reached into the crib and lifted Sophie. The toddler's skin was pale, cold. The crying had stopped. Something's wrong. The paramedics arrived in 6 minutes. One of them took Sophie from Sarah's arms, checked vitals, asked rapid-fire questions. When did this start? Any fever? Any vomiting? Any known allergies? The second paramedic noticed Atlas. He was standing in the hallway, completely still, eyes fixed on Sophie. Has the dog been acting strange? Sarah nodded, barely able to speak. Yes. For 2 days. The paramedic looked at Sophie again, looked at Atlas, then looked at Sarah. We need to get to the hospital now. At the ER, a doctor examined Sophie thoroughly. Blood tests, monitoring, questions. Then she came back into the room with a printout and a very serious expression. Your daughter's throat tissue was already beginning to swell. Sarah's breath stopped. The doctor continued, her voice calm but firm. Another 6 minutes, and we would be having a very different conversation. She looked at both parents. What made you bring Sher in tonight? The pale skin. The doctor nodded slowly. And the dog. Sarah looked at Chris. He looked back at her. He wouldn't leave Sophie alone, Sarah said quietly. For 2 days. We thought he was being aggressive. The doctor's expression softened. Dogs can detect allergic reaction before we can. It's documented. The change in scent, in breath chemistry, they pick it up long before symptoms are visible to us. Sarah sat down. Atlas knew. He was trying to tell you. When they brought Sophie home 3 days later, Atlas was waiting by the door. Sarah knelt down and put her arms around his neck. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Atlas exhaled slowly, leaning into her. That night, Sophie slept in the crib. Atlas slept on the floor beside it. No one asked him to. He just did.